Hello everyone and welcome to Creativity Unleashed. Here's a really cool video. We live in the tropics and we have a lot of termite issues. So all of our normal wood bookshelves, if they're not pressure treated or really exotic hardwood, will get termites all the way through them and they'll start eating the books and everything. And so these are galvanized bookshelves. They are made out of metal roofing. If you go to most of your metal places that sell roofing, they sell it in rolls, or it comes in rolls that aren't corrugated, and you can often buy it from them by the foot, and often a lot of those places also can bend it for you because they make gutters and a lot of things like that. So these are essentially kind of channel C shapes, and I just designed this up real quick, had the idea, and a few hours later drew it up and took it over to one of the places and ordered a prototype. This is actually the second revision of the project. Just changed a few things to use even a little less material, and it's working out extremely well, so follow along. Hopefully you find this very interesting and it helps you out on whatever project you're working on.
So here we just inserted the shelf inside of the channel. You can see the drawing of the shelf right there. So it has some flanges bent in, and we're just using a square and some clamps, and I later pulled out the magnetic squares and that made it way easier. You could just stick the magnets to it and turn them on, and it works out really well. You can see them in the picture there. I have a little Milwaukee M12 drill, really handy, and we're just using a hand pop riveter. I sure would love to have one of the Milwaukee electric rivet guns, but they are pretty pricey, so we'll get good strong hands by doing it this way. So it's pretty easy. We just mark out the spacings and put in the shelves, and the magnets do most of the work while we're filling the holes. But we sometimes add in an extra clamp just because when you're pushing with the drill so much, the inner sheet metal can want to sometimes bend in, and then your hole won't be exactly straight where you wanted it. So if you just grab one of the little clamps and clamp it, once you get a pop rivet in or so, it goes pretty easily. And of course, if you're making a wider shelf, you may want to consider adding some reinforcement underneath, depending on what kind of load you're going to carry. You could of course have some angle iron made by bending the sheet metal, or you could buy a 3/4 by 3/4 galvanized square tubing, add it underneath lengthwise or across, and pop rivet that in place, and you could of course stiffen this up a whole lot.
I have more sections of this Essential C, and I was thinking of cutting them to somewhere around the length of the shelf and potentially a little bit more so they can support the upper shelf is another option, and those can just kind of sandwich over the top of this. There could be some improvements on this edge, but besides that, I'm really liking how the shelf is coming out, but we'll see how it actually works out here in a second.
I designed the shelves in metric, but they're pretty close to 4 foot by 8 foot, and some of them are pretty close to 6 foot by 8 foot in dimension. And the material cost was around $120 each, and that includes the bending that was done. If I would have just bought the material without them being bent, it would have been about $50 or $60 per shelf. So if you have bending equipment, you could definitely do that yourself. But since I didn't have it, I just paid them to do it. I believe the thickness of this material is something around 1.3 or 1.6 millimeters. Don't remember exact, and I don't have it around to measure it with stick calipers. But it's your like standard galvanized roofing that would become corrugated. You could definitely use the box segments here as a time capsule to hide away things for future people to find maybe someday. So not the most useful use of the space behind there, but it's kind of cool to think you could hide things back in there. So one of my considerations for making the feet on the shelves was if I just rested it on the sharp metal roofing, it could potentially scratch up floors pretty good. And so what I ended up doing is cutting some hardwood, some varieties that usually never get termites, and adding 3 pieces. And on one of the other shelves I did, we actually just added 1 board piece across the bottom and then that lifts the shelf up by about 1/4 of an inch, and that makes it where you can slide it around or stuff safely. And of course, being so tall and all, you want to make sure that kids can't knock the shelf over on themselves or an earthquake. And so we're fixing it to the wall with some Tapcon screws and more of that hardwood as a spacer to offset from the trim that's on the floor, the baseboard trim.
Alright, so you can see we've got the bookshelf finished and mostly loaded. We're still organizing and need to build another bookshelf. But we realized that this might be a bit of an inefficiency. We're losing a bit of space here, as well as we're needing 2 pieces of sheet metal to make this stronger. So we're thinking of doing it more like these upper ones here. So we'll just show you the changes we're making to the new prototype. So here's the new shelf material, and here's the variation in the design. We're doing the flanges basically the same as we did on the shelves, and so then we're just notching these out. We'll actually cut this all the way out. And then to support the shelf better, I had these bent up, and so then these will just go underneath each shelf like so, and then we can rivet those in place both to the upright and to the shelf, and that will add the strength and rigidity necessary, and it will save quite a bit of sheet metal, so they come out a little bit cheaper to make.
My preferred way of cutting the notches out is with the Milwaukee M18 cordless grinder, especially because of the bends. It would make it very challenging to try to use snips to cut this out, so the grinder works really well.
Alright, you can see now we've got the notches cut out. So then you can see how it just slides right in. We'll be able to rivet from the side like before, but this flange here and this flange here will add the rigidity instead of putting a second piece. Gets rid of the sharp edges, and you could technically stuff a book back in there. And then of course to support it, since it's not going to be supported by the other piece, I had these pieces bent, and so these will just go in there. Some of them might have to be cut down just a slight bit, but you get the idea.
Well, thanks so much for watching. I hope this helps you out on whatever you're doing. Have a great one.